You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, which is part of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skyler Timmons, and joined here once again, fully healthy, it's Evan Lang.
Oh, fully healthy. about as healthy as it's going to get for the next little bit.
None of that fresh air for me. Oh, yeah.
So I do recommend, by the way, don't get pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad. It's not fun. And I'm like a relatively healthy person.
There you go.
Don't do it.
It happens.
Hey, a transaction happened today, by the way. The Rockies re-signed right-handed pitcher Luis Amoroso and reassigned him to the Hartford Yard Goats.
Oh.
He spent all of the 2024 season in Spokane.
There we go. There's our breaking news, and that'll do it for this episode of Affected by Altitude.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
90-second episode. But, you'll find that there's not a whole lot to talk about with the Rockies as of late. It's just kind of the boring part of the offseason where nothing's really happening. There's going to be minor league trades. We'll touch on one of those. But there's not a whole lot to talk about. So it's that point in the season where we'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel, stretching things out as much as we can and having fun. But, hey, we'll always be putting out feelers on our social media channels over on X if you're still there, or over on Blue Sky, where we're starting to try to build that up as well with the mass exodus where people have gone over there.
An exodus.
Oh! But yeah, you can always reach out to the Rocky Mountain Rooftop channel or account on both of those platforms. Heck, I think we're over on Threads too a little bit. I at least made the Threads account.
I haven't logged into that account in months, probably.
Instagram's a harder one to post on. But yeah, you can reach out to us, like send us your comments and your thoughts. We have a mailbag question out there too that we'd like to actually get some responses on. I know we're not as popular as maybe some other accounts in terms of fan engagement, but hey, we're trying our best. Yeah, and we appreciate it.
If you're still on Twitter, it's at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. If you are on Blue Sky, it's at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.bsky.social. You can also leave comments on the YouTube videos. You can leave comments on the Fans First Sports Network website. Yeah, we'd love to drum up a little bit more engagement. We know we have a small but dedicated listener base, which is awesome, but we'd love to hear from you guys a little bit more often. So,
like things you want us to talk about, or other ideas maybe for things you'd like us to do for the show and include more, or all kinds of stuff. We're open to suggestions because hey, we're mostly doing this for fun. We're here for you,
and it's a long off season, and boy, is it hard to come up with topics sometimes.
Please give me something to do. We can only draft so many teams consisting of Rockies players.
And that brings us to our activity for the day. We're drafting a team of which Colorado Rockies players would you want to fill your presidential cabinet with? I picked Clint Barmes for Secretary of Transportation.
There you go.
For when he transported that deer meat.
But yeah, it is. Reach out to us. We're willing to engage with the homies out there. You can follow even our personal accounts and stuff, fun stuff. But yeah, that's kind of the housekeeping agenda for this. But we do have something to talk about here in this first segment. It's going to be what this offseason's really filled with, Evan, is speculation, rumors, theorizing, hypothesizing, all that good stuff. Whether anything actually materializes, that's up for debate. But one of the things, this is coming from Jeff Passan at ESPN, who, thank goodness, he is staying on the baseball beat There was that brief chance he was going to leave for basketball, but no, we're keeping him with baseball. But was reporting in an article at ESPN Plus that the Rockies would be are willing to entertain trades for Brendan Rodgers and Justin Lawrence. So our second baseman, one of our relievers, both of them are in arbitration. Rodgers in his final year of arbitration, team control, owed maybe about $5.6 million, somewhere around there. J-Law still has 4 years of team control, roughly around there. He's reaching arbitration as a Super 2 player. But that he's owed maybe about $1 million, would earn maybe about $1 million this year. So both guys on the trading block. Evan, what do you make of this news about this rumor?
So not particularly surprising, at least on the Brendan Rodgers front. Bill Schmidt and Bud Black, et cetera, have all said, oh, Brendan Rodgers features into our plans for 2025. But if you got a good offer for him this offseason, instead of having to pay him, $5.6 million to trade him, especially when I do legitimately think that he doesn't really fit into the Rockies' plans of the future. They've got a lot of middle infielders showing promise. If Adele Amador can take that next step, or, maybe Ryan Ritter or somebody like that. Plus, just maximize on the value for Brendan Rodgers. A little more surprising is Justin Lawrence. I feel like they could have capitalized more on a trade for him, of course, last season. And he's not due that much in arbitration. But it's interesting because I do think J-Law especially could probably flourish with another organization that could help him iron out some of the kinks in his pitching, because we have seen that in there is a quality pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think this is the organization to necessarily bring it out of him. And I would be very sad to see him go. I love Justin Lawrence. And one of the teams linked to Justin Lawrence, all rumors, of course, is the New York Yankees.
For both
and for both Rodgers and for Lawrence. They've also been linked to the Angels, which is interesting. But for both of them, I wouldn't want them to go to the Yankees for one reason, and that's the facial hair and hair rules. Because one, Brendan Rodgers without a mullet and beard, I legitimately don't remember what he looks like without them, and I'm too scared to ask. And for Justin Lawrence, it would be a crime to make him cut off that mane.
Hey, George Steinbrenner don't care.
It's such an antiquated. I've always hated that rule. It's such an antiquated rule. And I don't want to harp about the Yankees. I don't love the New York Yankees. I don't necessarily hate them. But, they go all on and on about stuff like, oh, the no facial hair except for mustaches. You can't have long hair. You can't sully the New York Yankees uniform, but then they immediately threw a ad patch on there while refusing to do the City Connects or stuff like that because it denigrates the classic Yankees look. I don't know. That stuff just really bothers me. But if I'm the Rockies and somebody gives you a good offer, maybe as a package for the two of them or any of the other players that we are expecting trades for, Cal Quantrill or Austin Gomber, you gotta go for it.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned about a package. That's where I kind of feel like that's really going to be the best way to even move Brendan Rodgers, is he's going to have to be included in some sort of package, because it's going to be tough to really trade him straight up with somebody. A little bit tougher because oddly enough, Brendan Rodgers is pretty average for what he's going to be getting paid, because offensively he's a little too streaky. We've seen the glimpses of how good he can be, but it's still kind of streaky. His Gold Glove year defensively seems more like an outlier, where he's pretty average second baseman, maybe slightly above average at second base. There's the injury history, so that's also kind of sapped a lot of stuff. So he's going to be a hard one to trade on his own. It's certainly possible, and they could swing something, but I don't think we're really can expect a whole lot out of either of them, particularly Rodgers with those things I mentioned. And then Justin Lawrence, a little too inconsistent. He's also, 30 or so. So he's getting over that hump where he's not a spring chicken in the baseball world. So it's going to be hard to really get a whole lot for either of them. So yeah, maybe sweeten the pot and figure out how to combine them together, get a little prospect package, or you get a figure out a corner outfielder that they want, that veteran bat.
Yeah. What really sticks out to me, like you mentioned, is Brendan Rodgers fielding, whereas we know him as a pretty good defensive second baseman. But if you actually look at his numbers, like that 2022 season, 22 defensive runs saved with a 7.9 ultimate zone rating and 3 outs above average is a tremendous outlier compared to the rest of his seasons. And I do wonder if part of it is if he's willing to make less risks while fielding because of the injury history, especially, you know, the spring training 2023, where he goes to make what is normally a routine play for him. And he causes structural damage in his shoulder that needed surgery and kept him out for all but like 43 games in the season. And I always wonder how much how much of the injury history is causing that, but also just none of his other seasons really line up with that one season. And 2024, -4 defensive run save, -3 outs above average, just a 1.2 ultimate zone rating, just not a particularly amazing season at second base. Like, there are far better second basemen in the league. That doesn't mean that Brendan Rodgers is a bad player. It just means, like you said, his value is not high enough on his own to get what would probably be a good return.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's going to be hard to really. He hasn't lived up to any of the hype of the third overall pick type of thing, and so it's going to be rough to really get anything of value for these guys and figure out what can we get back for them. Please, I think Brendan Rodgers, they'll entertain it if nothing really comes to fruition or anything that they like. They keep him around for the final year and say, okay, Amador, you've got about a year to prove yourself between their AA, AAA, or whatever. And then it's your spot after Rodgers leaves in free agency. Justin Lawrence, on the other hand, like you said, I think he'd be better with a change of scenery. I think, Coors Field the Rockies have not been kind for him. Overall, it's been hard to find his consistency, and the team's not exactly the best equipped to work with pitchers of that kind of variety as well. And for a team that already struggles with walks and everything, maybe a change of scenery would be good for him. And a couple of years of control could net you something.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more appealing because the stuff is there, but there is a sweet spot in his mechanics that the Rockies have never really been able to find, that is finding more of the control without sacrificing as much of his velocity. Because without the velocity, his sinker isn't really as much of a threat. And so all he's really got is that sweeper, and you can't really rely on just one pitch, and that pitch being the sweeper. And I would love a team, not the Yankees, not the Dodgers, to find that sweet spot for him, because I really like Justin Lawrence. I think he's a super awesome guy. He's been exciting to watch, and I've been pulling for him since he started coming up through our farm system. But I just am not sure that it's ever really going to work.
Yeah, it's to see, because he's kind of one of the guys that kind of seems like an odd man out with that bullpen and what they're trying to go for. Where they're wanting to fill him with some veterans. He's kind of in that no man's land where he's had a good year, he's had a lot of bad years. So he's kind of on that bubble where he's only worth $1 million, getting paid $1 million. So not too terrible if we keep him, but if we can move him and replace him with somebody else, even better. So let's see where they go, and trade partners the Rockies like to go to. Could Atlanta say, hey, we want him, or perhaps even the Cleveland Guardians, the pitching factory, or a new contender team like the Royals. Do they want any more reliever help?
Yeah. And when you look at the age of our pitching staff, Justin Lawrence is now getting up there in years. He's going to be 30 this coming season. And you look at a lot of the guys who got the most work, especially out of the bullpen down the stretch in 2024, you have guys who are all 25 or younger. The oldest guy who got some of the most work is Jeff Criswell and he's 25. And then you've got Evan Justice, Victor Vodnik, Halverson Hill, Bradley Blaylock, Luis Peralta, Anthony Molina, Angel Chivi. They're all just 25 and down. And that's what we've heard more and more from the Rockies about this bullpen is it's going to keep getting younger as these prospects start coming up. You know, there are even more guys that we're expecting to make debuts out of the bullpen in 2025, guys like maybe even Zach Agnos. And that kind of makes it tougher because they do say they want some veterans to sort of anchor down that bullpen. Mm-hmm. But I just, like I said, I love Justin Lawrence, but with the struggles that he has had, I just can't view him as a veteran anchor for the bullpen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's hard to figure out what exactly they can do with some of these guys because there's so much shuffling and figuring out what they want. But putting at least, I think that's what's at least encouraging is we're at least hearing them, they'll entertain the thought of trades for some of these guys, especially a guy like Lawrence or Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah,
because that's all we hear is the repetition again about the same old guys for the team. We've heard recently about Sean Bouchard. Oh, we think he has a good future. He's like, what, 28, 29? He's not going to be part of your future.
Yeah, and I love Sean Bouchard, but
he hasn't earned a spot.
Exactly. And there's so many younger guys now, and there's always, this team is going to constantly now until /if they find their next contention window, it's going to be a constant of there is a younger guy who should be playing instead. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the I'll bring it up. I won't necessarily harp on it, but one of the questions that we got on Blue Sky was like, who do you trade or who do you get rid of to clear up some of the logjam in the outfield for the Rockies? And one of those guys to me is Bouchard. Of maybe another team would like a fourth outfielder or something with his skill set, but the Rockies have so many outfielders that Sean Bouchard is, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say unnecessary because that sounds mean, but yes, unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if any of these pan out. This would all just be smoke in the air, and come beginning of spring training, we're like, well, they're still here, and we assume they'll be on the opening day roster.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with Rodgers. In our top 30 prospects list on MLB Pipeline, there are 5 guys who can all play second base.
Yeah, but instead we'll say, no, it'll be Rodgers' year. He's due for a breakout.
Like that Ryan McMahon breakout we keep waiting for.
Yeah, it'll come eventually. Oh, well, the world's going to end before then anyway. Yeah, we'll see. We will see. But hey, it's nice to be considered at least for rumors.
Yeah. I just like to be a part of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then they don't really have, no, more so for Lawrence, they do have backup. He's easily replaceable. Rodgers is a little more up in the air where the options so far that could step in right away. Owen Miller.
I mean, personally, I think if you trade Brendan Rodgers and you don't think any of your other guys like Amador are ready to go, you give Aaron Schunk the starting role. He plays a perfectly cromulent second base, and he was better than advertised in a very limited role and showed a lot of patience last year, where Schunk probably should have been up in 2023 and should have gotten far more playing time than he did in 2024.
Yeah. Let's see, because there's other guys in there too. Greg Jones is a guy who can learn some more second base.
You know, that guy that you traded a promising pitching prospect for.
Yeah. There's them. Sterling Thompson has played second base before. He could be a guy. There's also some other guys like a Hunter Stovall or some of those guys from AAA that became free agents. Whatnot. So there are options. You don't have to really be married to Brendan Rodgers. Like there's options. If you can move him, I say go for it. Sell, baby, sell.
Yes. That should be for most of these guys. If you can move him, do so.
Do it. Even if it is to the Yankees.
Even if it depends on the return. If it's what I view as a bad return, I'll throw a tantrum about it.
You get Aaron Judge and Justin Lawrence. We get Aaron Judge.
Okay.
And
You
all
get
the money to get Juan Soto.
You get Giancarlo Stanton.
Ugh.
You know, I would take him as a DH.
He can't
Honestly,
run.
He can't, but neither can several of our players. And Giancarlo Stanton make ball go far. Hit ball very hard.
No, he'd have a career high ground ball percentage and strikeouts and hit 10 home runs.
Wouldn't that be the most Rockies thing in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Is if we signed Juan Soto and he immediately couldn't draw walks anymore.
Leads the league in strikeouts and ground ball percentage. And limps to 10 home runs. We'll give him 15 home runs.
See, that's how we would know that this organization is truly, truly cursed.
Mm-hmm. But oh goodness. But anyways, yeah, that's the rumor. Rodgers and J-Law on the trade block. We'll see what happens over the course of the winter, if anything. But we'll keep an eye on it, as always, here on Affected by Altitude. But we'll take a break here. When we come back, it's projection season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're back here on Affected by Altitude, Skyler and Evan. And, well, over at FanGraphs, there's usually the ZiPS, the steamer ZiPS and steamers projections, all that good stuff. And unsurprisingly, Rockies, not looking great. But not to be unexpected.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, so you can read this over on fangraphs.com, written by Dan Szymborski. And Dan Szymborski is notably not a fan of our Colorado Rockies. And at this point, I can't really blame him. But this is probably one of the more positive things that FanGraphs has said about the Rockies in recent memory. And it's not that the Rockies are going to be good. In fact, the article opens up with saying, are the Rockies a good team? No, they are not. Are the Rockies even a middling team? Again, no. But things may slowly be getting better. And, you know, for better or for worse, it mentions that the Rockies they're going to be bad in 2025, surprising no one. We all know the Rockies are probably not going to be good next year, but that they are on the right track because on paper, at least, they are finally entering the stage of the rebuild where most of the guys on the field are young guys. Jake Cave is gone. Charlie Blackmon, as much as we love him, is now gone. You know, Austin Gomber, Brendan Rodgers, a bunch of the other guys, they're in the projection, but they are also on the trade block. And a lot of the other guys in the projection are all fairly young guys. You know, so we know that the Rockies are going to be bad and potentially even worse than the projection shows. But that the team is at least on the right track. Projection shows Brenton Doyle, again, being our most valuable player with 3.5 WAR per FanGraphs. And then Ezequiel Tovar tied for that, also at 3.5. Then what we get from the rest of the positions may vary. The bullpen is not great. The starting pitchers are not great. But he does predict that Chase Dollander will make his debut in 2025. And the designated hitter position, also not fabulous. Same for first base. Same for right field.
Same for just about everything.
Pretty much. If your name is not Brenton Doyle or Ezequiel Tovar, or he is pretty generous, Ryan McMahon with 2.8 wins above replacement, then you're probably going to have an okay at best season. But I do think, one, that the ZiPS projections tend to undervalue. They trend towards undervaluing players. Mm-hmm. And Michael Toglia is predicted per ZiPS to have 0.5 wins above replacement. And, you know, Michael Toglia had a pretty good season. He was over in Baseball Reference land worth 2.2 wins above replacement. I need to see how much he was worth via FanGraphs, but Tolia had a pretty good season and is trending upwards. And you can say the same for a lot of these other guys where there is a chance that they outperform these ZiPS projections, because they're projections. It's a guess, essentially. It's a well-educated guess. I made a well-educated wish that the Rockies would win 100 games this year. But all you can really say at the end of the day is, on paper, like FanGraphs say, the team is at least trending in the right direction. And that what I've been saying to pretty much everybody who asks, who goes, how are the Rockies going to be next year? I tell them, oh, they're going to be bad, but there's going to be a lot of individual performances to enjoy and a lot of small things to look forward to.
Or on the tail end, a lot of things to just lament. That continues to just point out the problems of the organization overall. But yeah, and even now, this isn't how the roster is going to look come opening day. No, we'll see what other adjustments or moves they make, things that'll happen. But the thing about baseball is you can project, you can make guesses, but at the end of the day, no one knows.
Yeah, like nobody expected Tim Anderson to just completely flame out the way he did. Tim Anderson was one of the best players in baseball for quite some time, and then all of a sudden, he wasn't. And you never know when that's gonna. It's the same with football players. Justin Tucker of the Baltimore Ravens has been automatic with field goals for over a decade, and now all of a sudden this season he can't hit anything.
No, it's like in a lot. We've seen it with the Rockies, especially. Of Kyle Freeland has that incredible 2018. Okay, he's part of this next generation. This is going to be amazing. Same with Herman Marquez. These guys have a great, incredible season. They are due for great things. Oh, they've just dropped off the map. So, like, I think like predicting for baseball is a lot harder than it is for other sports, just because there's so many variables outside of your control that it gets tough to predict. And so you can get a good idea, like you said, educated guess. These are good, frame of reference, but everything can still change. I don't think anybody had Brendan Doyle having as good of a year as he did at the end of last season.
And honestly, WAR is a great tool, but it's not the be-all, end-all, and sometimes it can be a little bit incomprehensible. Like, per FanGraphs, Sam Hilliard was one of the best players for the Rockies this season. And I think Sam had himself a pretty decent year as a backup outfielder. But, like, to have him be in basically the top 10, almost top 5 for wins above replacement, above guys like Michael Tolia, it's a little much.
Yeah, it's just fun to see that thought process, because part of it too is people never really look highly on the Rockies anyway. FanGraphs doesn't a lot of the time, and so they're just expected to just be bad. And so some players get underrated, some get overrated.
And to be fair, as a team, the Rockies have not done a whole lot to buck those expectations.
Exactly.
Well, we just assume that the Rockies are going to be bad. But individual players have been great and often get overlooked. Like, if you're a player of MLB The Show and they do those like weekly and monthly players, like there were so many times over 2024 we're like, well, surely there's got to be a Tops Now or a special weekly player or monthly player of such and such. They had an incredible stretch right here, and then they don't get one, and you're just like, oh, well, okay, it's the Rockies. We're just not. We're never going to be, unless, and heck, I'll even quote Dick Monfort here. I need to find the exact quote now, because otherwise I'm just going to put my foot in my mouth or say something dumb. My biggest problem is that I hate losing, but it's hard to debate anyone when you're losing. And that's the Rockies in a nutshell.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like you can go, well, someone will go, oh man, the Rockies are terrible, and someone else will go, or will go, what about Brenton Doyle and Ezekiel Tovar and such and blah blah, and they'll go, yeah, but they still play for the Rockies, and then we just sort of slump our shoulders to go, yeah.
Yeah, too much complacency for failure,
and too much failure for complacency.
and it's like, are the Rockies ever motivated? They see rankings like this or projections. Does the front office look at them? And if they do, what reaction do they have to it? Is it, they don't know what they're talking about, we're going to be fine? Or is it, that's what they think of us?
We'll show them.
Yeah, we'll show them.
The former is my guess. Just judging on what we know about this front office, especially Dick Monfort, of, outside ideas. They don't know what they're talking about. It would never work, or we already tried what they suggest and it didn't work, so why would we try it again? It's the same thing that I've always said, is that this front office, led by Dick Monfort, is convinced that they are the only ones who can figure out baseball at altitude, and no one else can.
Yeah.
And they've got to be the ones to figure it out.
And how dare these outsiders criticize us? They don't know what it's like on the inside.
Exactly.
They have no idea the machinations of the mind.
And I admit, it is really frustrating. I've butted heads with Dan Zaborski over his overly critical, sometimes to the point of, I would call, cruel coverage of the Rockies. But at the same time, we get that from a lot of national media figures, and the Rockies just don't really do enough to buck that interpretation of this team. Especially when you've got, like they're bringing back Bud Black, and the overall consensus from national baseball media is, what are they doing? And the overall consensus from us was, what are we doing?
Why are we still doing this? It's interesting where those projections, they give us a good idea, but it's hard to go either way. And we're probably, they're going to be more accurate as of late than the Rockies, surprising anybody. And if they still are lining up to what's projected and the projections are terrible, you've got to take them seriously and look at it and say, hey, this ain't working. We've got to do something. Whether it's improving our coaching and developing and use of analytics, or it's just straight up, we got to get better players.
Yeah.
We got to get better resources on this roster. Because, we like the guys that we have, but they're not getting the job done, too.
Yeah, and the worst part of that is, I'm not really sure how this team does that, because that, especially now, without the TV revenue, they can't really afford to make big splashes in free agency. But at the same time, so this was brought up, Joel Milholm over at Purple Row wrote an article about how the Rockies need to find new sources of revenue, because that TV money's not coming back anytime soon.
Yeah.
And the Rockies could be one of many teams that has an advertising patch. And I was talking about this with Renee Deckert over on Blue Sky. And what I said was, I understand where we're coming from with, we need to bring in more money, but I don't trust the Rockies to make the right call with the money that it would bring in. So therefore, why bother? Especially when I hate advertising patches. I despise them with all of my heart. And if I knew that the Rockies would make a wise investment with the money that they got from an advertising patch, I would begrudgingly accept it. But because I know that they won't, I don't want it.
When they're going to take any savings they got and then turn around and spend $182 million on Chris Bryant.
We really think he's going to be a big part of our season this year, though, Skyler. We're checking in with him in his home in Las Vegas. And we're hearing a lot of positive things.
What are those check-ins like, Evan?
Hey, Chris, how you doing? Oh, it's great. Lots of positive things going on over here. Okay, that's it.
What's that? Your $300,000 Lamborghini got stolen
and uncovered, like a huge multi-billion-dollar car smuggling and theft ring. That story is wild, by the way. So apparently, it hasn't been officially confirmed that it's Chris Bryant's, but a $300,000 Lamborghini that was registered under the name Christopher Bryant from the Cherry Hills area where Chris Bryant happens to live during the regular season got stolen. And through tracking down this car, they uncovered like a massive car theft ring. It's the most interesting thing to happen to a Rockies player in a while.
Mm-hmm. Especially Chris Bryant.
Like, remember when Larry Walker found that dead body on his property?
What?
This was early 2000s. Larry Walker was on the injured list, and he was riding around on his property and found a dead body.
Interesting. Suspicious?
I'm unknown. I mean, they didn't think Larry Walker did it. I sure hope he didn't. I don't know though. Of all the Rockies players we'd let get away with murder, Larry's probably one of them.
I don't know.
There's a question for the mailbag, folks. Tell us in the comments which Rockies player of all history would you let get away with an actual murder?
No, I will not support that question.
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's instead ask. I don't know.
Whose Rockies vehicle would you want to steal?
Steal Charlie Blackmon's 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's newer than my car. But yeah, back to our projections thing and like the revenue stuff. We just never know.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I do think, like, looking at these projections, I think a large number of these players have the opportunity to far outperform what they are projected to perform at.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think these ZiPS projections especially come out very, very early. I mentioned this on Blue Sky, is that if the Rockies pull the trigger on any of these potential trades that we've talked about in the last couple of weeks and today, this projection changes drastically already.
Mm-hmm.
And I called it grim, but that's not necessarily what I mean. And what I more mean is overall team outlook and overall wins above replacement versus like it actually affecting how the Rockies perform next season. Because like I've said, I don't think the Rockies are going to be good next year. I don't think they're going to have a winning season. And there's an entirely possible outcome where we lose 100 games for the third straight year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So between now and spring training, those projections are going to change quite a bit. And it'll be interesting to see whether they get worse, whether they get better, all that good stuff. But we have a nice frame of reference now for if the season started tomorrow. Yeah, we have a good idea what the Rockies would look like and how it would turn out. And so it's up to them to go through this offseason and fix that. And really quick here before we break it here, one of those additions was getting an Australian minor league pitcher. Was it Jimmy O'Loughlin?
His full name is Jack Tehaki O'Loughlin.
Jack O'Loughlin.
He was born in Adelaide in South Australia.
I don't know why I was throwing Jimmy out there, but
because you heard the name O'Loughlin and immediately assumed.
Yeah, it started with a J. Oh, Jimmy O'Loughlin. What's that? He's from Australia?
There's an Irish stand-up comedian. I'm blanking on his name right now, and he says like I was at a restaurant and I made my order, and the waiter comes out and says, your potatoes are on the way, and I go, I didn't order any potatoes. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I don't know what happened. It's I'm pretty sure I've got a good idea. You heard my voice and then haven't been able to get the word potatoes out of your head since.
Makes sense. Yeah, not much to talk about with O'Loughlin. They signed him, reportedly have signed him. Nothing's confirmed yet. And this was reported by Bob Nightingale, so who knows? Maybe he meant to say some other name. But we assume Jack O'Loughlin has been signed by the Rockies. A brief debut with the Oakland A's this past season. Wasn't too shabby. He only made 4 appearances. 3 of those, Evan, were scoreless appearances of multiple innings. So he had about 7 innings, 7 scoreless innings over 3 games. But then in his last game on July 6th, he gave up 5 runs in 2 2/3 against the Orioles. That's where it all came from. But history as a starter in the minors, it's been okay. Walks maybe too many people. Kind of a soft tosser, sinker. So not really a whole lot to write home about. But he's young and a good depth piece. You can stash away down there in AAA and then use maybe at the big league level a little bit. Another lefty as well.
And it's worth noting that, context is key. In that one game where he gave up the 5 earned runs, he came in I think the 7th inning. And this is a game that the Athletics ended up winning 19-8.
Yeah, ball was flying.
So less of a big deal in the grand scheme of things. And the Orioles scored like 7 of those runs in the final 3 innings, 2 2/3 of which were pitched by O'Loughlin. So it's basically the A's going, we are so far ahead right now that, just go out and toss a couple.
Yeah. A long reliever. Like I said, history as a starter down in the minors. Relieved more last season. Kind of struggled in AAA last year. But like I said, not a terrible pickup, just as a depth piece. I jokingly refer to him as the Australian version of Ty Block. But he maybe walks more people than Ty Block. But yeah, just a lefty, long reliever, can start, soft tosser. He's not going to strike out a lot of people. He's going to walk some people. Fortunately, he's going to give up some hard contact, but he can go out there and eat a couple innings for you. So interesting to see how he does. Nice to get some variety. Having an Australian on the team there, mate.
Not our first Australian, though. We had an Australian in the minor leagues a couple of years ago, and now I cannot remember what his name was. But he played on Team Australia for the World Baseball Classic.
There you go. And also had a British guy, Michael Peterson. And as well as our German player, Jeff Baker, who was just born in Germany.
I always forget that he is Australian. Or not Australian, German. I got Aussies on the mind.
Yeah. But yeah, not much else to write home about with Jack O'Loughlin, but hey, welcome.
It's an interesting pickup.
Yeah, it's one of those like, okay, like whatever.
No such thing as a bad minor league deal.
Everybody needs depth. Also, Connor Van Scoyk is back with the organization. Had a really good second half in AA, so he'll be primed. He probably gets added to the 40-man, Evan, because he is Rule 5 eligible.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me, and not surprising that he came back. He was one of the first ones that we thought the Rockies are probably going to try and re-sign him, and they did. So, yay!
Yeah, had a really good second half in AA, so could make his debut in 2025 and join those projections. But yeah, so that's all that. Projections, a couple of little moves there for the team. So we'll take one final break here. When we come back, we're going to talk Arizona Fall League because it's over. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Back here to Affected by Altitude. Skyler Timmons, Evan Lang here with you on the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network. New episodes every week on Mondays. And we're here in the long off season. And it's going to get even longer because the Arizona Fall League is now over. And a huge congratulations to the Salt River Rafters who take home the championship, which the Rockies are part of this, are one of the affiliates that feed this team. So round of applause for them. Hooray.
Yeah, huge shout out to the Salt River Rafters walking away with the Arizona Fall League championship. The Rafters are made up of players from your Colorado Rockies, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Minnesota Twins, the New York Yankees, and the Washington Nationals this year. And overall pretty fun season and pretty cool. I think it's the first time in like 5 years or so that the Rafters have won the Fall League. So pretty cool that they could win the championship game last night. And the best part was the Rockies had some major contributors, especially in the championship game, but overall just during the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it kind of boiled down where only a couple of guys were really ingrained in it. You send a bunch, but then it ultimately becomes like there's only like a little core group that ends up playing most of the games. Like Gabriel Hughes didn't work a ton, it seemed like. Or maybe it's just because I only paid attention on Tuesday nights when I added it for the rock pile. But a nice little groups, particularly with a couple of the offensive guys, which, hey, that's what you need is more offensive players, figuring out depth guys. But really, we got some good guys there for the Salt River Rafters that played a big part for the team this season.
Yeah, Gabriel Hughes, the big thing for him was honestly just being there.
Yeah.
As he recovers from Tommy John. This was his first major game action since his Tommy John surgery. And could he have done better? Yeah. He made 6 starts. One of, I believe, like 5 pitchers in all of the Arizona Fall League to make 6 starts, and ended up with an ERA of 8.31. But the big thing was not necessarily how he did, it's just the fact that he was out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super happy for Gabriel Hughes. I am just happy to see him. He ended up pitching the most innings actually of any Salt River Rafter, followed by Michael Prasecki, another Rockies prospect pitcher, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
McCade Brown also up there at 11.1 innings. So the Rockies pitching staff that was there did get a decent amount of work, but the guy that we will talk about the most is Mr. John Evan Justice, also better known as Evan Justice, the only guy of the Rockies delegation with big league experience to go down to the Arizona Fall League. Another guy who also down there because of his limited playing time in 2024 and recovering from injuries. They just wanted him to get more work and sort of build up his repertoire and his confidence. And he ended up having a fabulous season where he pitched 8 2/3 innings, scoreless, no hits, 1 walk, 1 hit batter, 11 strikeouts. That'll play. And even he earned the save in the championship game, and his save in the championship game, it wasn't his best stuff. He struggled a bit with command. He did hit a batter, and his catcher was having a hard time receiving him, and I think part of that is because his last time out was the Arizona Fall League Fall Stars game, and he got a bit roughed up there for the first time all fall. And I think it was part of bouncing back from that, but still ended up securing the save for the Rafters victory. And I think Evan Justice is going to ride the Fall League into an opportunity to be part of the Rockies opening day bullpen next year.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because I'm still weary of him just with the way he pitches, where his herky-jerky motions, and they've written about this, it's a double-edged sword where it can be very effective, but when he's not on, it's very hittable and it becomes very wild. And he found that consistency during the regular season in the Arizona Fall League, 11 strikeouts to 1 walk. That's great, but will that play against big league hitters? And in their brief little bit of time that we've seen him with the big leagues, that's been a problem where walks have been the issue. So it's like you said, can he ride this high that he had in the Arizona Fall League, carry that into the big leagues, and actually maintain that consistency?
Yeah. It's tough because he only made 1 appearance in the bigs this year, and he faced 2 batters. He walked 1, he struck out 1, which is very emblematic of his overall performances, but it's such a small sample size that you can't really base a ton off of that.
Or like in 2023, he had the 7 strikeouts, 8 walks, and 7 1/3, which is a tiny little bit more, but still, it's not enough to like make the full on conclusions. It's enough to be worried about, to be concerned about it, but who doesn't struggle with walks on the Rockies roster? But it's some like you see it down in the minors too. That'll be the issue where he's got to keep walks in control and find consistency on the mound. And so he found that consistency in the Arizona Fall League. Can he carry that into spring training and find a way onto the roster that way?
Yeah, and I think he's got a shot. Like I do. I've been somewhat high on Evan Justice. He had a rough season last year, dealt with injuries when he was on the field. He struggled a lot, especially in AAA. But he's got some interesting stuff. And so I'd like to see what he can do. He's basically the only pitcher that the Rockies sent to the Arizona Fall League that we can even expect to see on the big league roster at any point in 2025. I don't think any of the other guys that we sent in our delegation have much of a chance of being there, and that's just because they're all so much less far along in their development. Where Michael Prosecki spent most of his year with Spokane, as did Gabriel Hughes didn't pitch at all in 2024 outside of the fall league. So really, if you're looking for a guy from the fall league that's going to be in the bigs next year, it's Evan Justice, and that's pretty much it. Even for the position players.
Yeah, which we can talk about now because we've talked about there's main guys. There's a couple other relievers in there, but they didn't really shine through. Nothing too big. Evan Justice was really the highlight in there. But over on the offensive side, there was 3 guys who really got the most action, were in there most every day. Ryan Ritter, Juan Guerrero, and Skyler Messenger. And really it was Ritter and Messenger that were really instrumental, like everyday staples in that lineup during the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah, Messenger was the pleasant surprise. Not a ranked prospect, not particularly high on anybody's prospect board, but we like him here on Rocky Mountain Rooftop and Affected by Altitude for several reasons. One, he's got the same name as one of our hosts.
His name's Evan?
Yes. Skyler Messenger is named Evan.
It's spelled Evan.
Well, when they put out the press release for Evan Justice going to the Arizona Fall League, they kept on saying John Justice because his legal first name is John, but he goes by his middle name Evan.
Yeah, all of
and so I was really confused at first because I'm like, who's John Justice? And then I had to look at it. I was like, oh, it's Evan Justice. Okay, that makes more sense. And he's also Skyler Messenger, also a local kid, product in Iowa High School, born in Boulder, Colorado. And he's also just been really fun to watch and a really high effort kind of guy. Was doing a lot of rehab and I believe started the season injured, and that's why he came into the season so late. But Skyler Messenger ended up being named to the All-Star team for the Arizona Fall League, which is really, really cool. And he ended up having a pretty good season overall. Hit 299, 342, 358 with 1 home run and 1 double. Drew 5 walks to 22 strikeouts, had 2 stolen bases, 1 caught stealing. And in the championship game, hit a double that was almost out of the park, walked twice, and scored twice. And was a big part, scored 2 of the 3 runs that led the Rafters to victory. So that was pretty cool. And I am excited to see more of what he can do in the Rockies minor league system coming up here.
Yeah, because he's 26. And I remember talking to our friend Stephen Rice when he was broadcasting for the Fresno Grizzlies. And talking about Skyler Messenger and just the mentality and work ethic that this guy has. And it's nice to see him get that. It was surprising to me that he went to the Arizona Fall League. I was like, it kind of seems like a really random choice. But remember in 2023, he had like an MVP caliber season down there in Fresno that year. And then he was he felt like the next big thing to me, a relatively lower draft pick, but there's a lot of potential there. The local kid played at Texas, so he played under Troy Tulowitzki and all that. And so The injury really sidelined him this year. He spent a lot of time down in the Arizona Complex League. He had a rougher year, and that power of Denver really returned. But it was nice to see in the Arizona Fall League where it was more well-rounded. Again, we would like to see more power out of him, especially as a corner infielder. Played mostly first base, but he's also a third baseman, can play both. So I'd like to see more, but he was hitting at the bottom of the lineup usually. So he was putting the ball in play, had a really high average, good on base. So there's that potential there. Be nice to see him continue to grow up a little bit more. Maybe probably starts the year down in Double-A next year, maybe, or he kicks it off in Spokane to start the year there since he didn't play that much there. Start him there and give him room to grow. Because wherever Charlie Condon's not playing, Skyler Messenger can go play there.
Absolutely.
On the infield.
Yeah, and so Skyler Messenger, great Arizona Fall League. Congratulations to him. Next guy we sent who had a pretty solid time down there was Juan Guerrero, who's had an interesting Arizona Fall League. He hit the ball very hard, 7 doubles, 4 home runs, 18 RBI. But overall, his numbers don't look that great. 208 batting average, 241 on base, and 472 slugging for a .713 OPS. But one of the leaders for the Salt River Rafters in home runs. So interesting season for him. And then the other big guy to talk about, and who will probably wrap up the show here talking about, is middle infielder Ryan Ritter, who played a lot to start the Fall League. I believe was out for a little bit with an injury, and then came back and finished up the season playing in the Fall League. His numbers, if you look at them on their face, are not that great. But it's mostly his batting average. He had a 150 batting average. He did hit 2 home runs and had 2 doubles with 4 RBI, stole 3 bases. But his big thing is his .477 on base percentage, because he drew 18 walks to 19 strikeouts. So an almost 1-to-1 ratio of strikeouts to walks.
Yeah, that's really good. You know, if nothing else, you can look at the batting average and say, oh, this guy was terrible. But then you look, oh, he drew 18 walks. Yeah, he only had 6 hits in the regular season. 2 of them were doubles. So not a lot of playing time in 40 at-bats in 14 games. But he was getting on base. So he was patient at the plate, drew those 18 walks.
Yeah, patience and pitch recognition. Things that we've been preaching that the big league roster needs for quite some time now.
And he was one who had been recovering from injury as well from the regular season. That's why he came to the Arizona Fall League partly as well, because he got that hand injury in Double-A that really sidelined him for the rest of the year. Comes into the Arizona Fall League to just get some more action. He's a guy who could be in that running of whatever happens with Brendan Rodgers. Second base is up for grab. We all assumed that Amador was the runaway candidate, but Ryan Ritter, he slowly chipped away at that, where he could step in and be the next guy to play second base for the Rockies.
Yeah, and something that I keep trying to remember when looking at his batting average is the Arizona Fall League, 1, is very hard. It's considered kind of a finishing school for prospects of like, this is a challenge that we want you to face. But 2, Ryan Ritter was drafted out of the University of Kentucky as a glove first prospect. He was a very good defensive infielder with the University of Kentucky, and has continued to be a very good defensive infielder in the Rockies farm system. But his bat was considered a project, and we have seen a ton of development with his bat as he sort of moved up in the Rockies farm system. And that pitch recognition and plate discipline for him is what I really like. And I want to see more of that in the minor league season in 2025.
Yeah. That evolution of the second base prospect rankings and pecking order, I think Amador is still at the top of the list, but Ritter's made it a little bit more difficult for the Rockies, especially after the year he had in Double-A. I think Amador's still above him, but he's making it close.
Yeah, the Rockies' second base prospects are weird, because really the only guy who is officially a second baseman is Adele Amador. at least on what he's listed as.
Yeah,
But
because he was a shortstop that they moved over.
But you've got 4 other guys who can all play and all have played second base, where you've got Cole Carrig, but Cole Carrig has now mostly moved to center field. And he was drafted as a catcher, which is also really funny. You've got Ryan Ritter, who was drafted as a shortstop and now plays mostly second base. You've got Dion Jorge, who can also play second base. It's just, you've got all these guys that can be moved to that position or largely have.
Mm-hmm. If only there was a way to make room for them to play that position.
Sign more outfielders.
Yeah. Give me more outfielders. I need more corner outfielders.
Buy me corner outfielders or go to hell.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that'll round out our AFL guys. There's a couple other in there, but these are the main ones that really stood out. And again, congratulations to all of them and the Salt River Rafters on their championship win. It's always nice to feel the thrill of victory. We have to feel something when we're Rockies fans. We're dead inside. We got to feel something.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed watching the game.
It's good stuff. But that'll do it here for this edition of Affected by Altitude. And hey, we still managed to fill our normal time of an hour, Evan.
It's because you got my mouth running about complaining about the front office.
Mm-hmm. But we mentioned at the top of the show, but real quick, Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlang27.bsky.social. You can also find me on purplerow.com writing the Monday Rock Piles. Might also do something for Tuesday in terms of just doing an Arizona Fall League wrap-up. We will see. We're also right in the middle of our Ranking the Rockies project. We're getting towards the end of it. There will be another 5 out this week. And you can always find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. That's iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Basically, wherever you can find a podcast, we'll be on it. And for social media, you can find us on YouTube for video versions of the podcast at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's ROCKYMTN Rooftop. And you can find us at that same handle on most other social media platforms. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're really trying to build up our Blue Sky presence because a lot of baseball folks are headed over to Blue Sky. So you can find us Rocky Mountain Rooftop at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.bsky.social. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on X, formerly known as Twitter. Still hanging out there. Sideline_crowd. But you can also find it over at Blue Sky S Timmins 13. That's STIMMINS. People think there's an O in there, Evan. There is no O in my name. Yeah, that's the German way to spell it, is with the O. The more Irish version is with the I. There's your family history lesson for the week.
It means no worries.
Mm-hmm. For the rest of your days. But stimmins13.bsky.social, whatever that garbage is. Just look up S Timmins 13 or Skyler Timmins. You'll find me.
Find him.
You will find me.
That is my one complaint about Blue Sky is the whole domain name handle thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does provide an interesting way for people to verify their accounts, where they use their own domain.
But I ain't got no domain.
I mean, we could if we really wanted to.
We're at fansfirstsportsnetwork.com. Fansfirstsports.com, I believe is what it's called. But you can find me there at Fans First, and then writing Wednesday Rock Piles for Purple Row. Good stuff. And go look out for every Rocky Ever episodes. Our most recent one, we talked about Dustin Garneau, Scott Oberg, and Tony Walters. Good stuff.
All 3 who have assumed positions within the organization after their retirement.
Mm-hmm. That's the idea. But until next time, this has been Affected by Altitude. I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Hit him with it.
Farewell.
Bye-bye.
Ooh, that was rough. That was rough.
This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.